This episode of the PC Perspective Podcast is brought to you by KiwiCo. Change the way your kid plays with KiwiCo. Visit kiwico.com/PCPer to get your first crate free. That's KIWICO.com/PCPer. Hey everyone, welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is episode 537, being recorded Wednesday, March 20th, 2019. I'm Jim Tanis.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
I'm Sebastian Peak.
And we're glad you could join us this evening. We record every Wednesday night. We record every Wednesday night we're able. We'll have some coming up in a couple of weeks where we have to change things up, but we'll let you know about that. But if you want to know when we go live, head to pcper.com/subscribe, where you can join our mailing list, where we use it only to let you know about our live events. We don't use it for any other marketing, or we don't sell it or anything. It's just a quick little email we send out about an hour or so before we go live, so you know when you can join us. And then check us out. We are currently doing our live streaming on YouTube, but come next month, according to the plan, we'll have our new website up, and we'll have a pcper.com/live page back in action for you to easily join our live streams there. But we're here, we're live. I apologize. My video tonight is a little slow. The frame rate is messed up. We were troubleshooting before we went live, and I can't fix it. So just put some tape over the screen on my little square, and that'll fix that up for you. Well, you should do that anyway, regardless of frame rate.
I was going to say, I mean, when have I taken the tape off?
Exactly. There you go. So I have to switch the squares around now to throw everyone off. But
don't you dare.
We're glad you could join us. We've got a lot of news today, or news this week. We had Nvidia's GTC and the GDC conference, where the headliner, of course, was Google's expected unveiling of its game streaming service, Stadia. So we'll be talking about that. But first up, we've got a couple of reviews this week, starting with a review of a new Razer mouse from Chris Koch, who took a look at the Razer Basilisk Essential, and this is a lower cost. I mean, it's a cheaper, lower cost, lower
less expensive.
Well, it is less expensive, and I'm trying to say cheap without degrading the product here, but it does have lower specs. It's a version of the regular Basilisk, the well-reviewed Basilisk mouse. Starts at $49.90, or it's currently priced at $49.99 US, and it has a 6400 DPI sensor versus the 16,000 DPI sensors that are becoming common in higher end gaming mice. But it's got the sort of the same look and feel, but just a little bit different materials. It's a lightweight mouse, 95 grams, customizable logo for the lighting, and overall, he really liked it as a cheaper alternative. If you don't want to spend the $80 or so for a Basilisk or one of the higher end gaming mice, he saw it as a good alternative. I know, Sebastian, did you take a look at this as well, or his review?
Yes, yeah. When I was inputting it, and kind of like you just said, like he prefers the more expensive version, of course, but and I have not seen Amazon pricing on this. I'm looking right now, and I'm seeing like 39-ish, which may be a different model, but to get to the lower price point, like you said, he was happy with the results overall. He said they were fair for the price. He was talking about accuracy using a mouse testing application called the Zowie Mouse Rate Checker. So we got pretty in depth in the review as far as the overall performance of it, but we always have to temper our conclusions based on the price, and he kind of felt like it was priced right for the performance level, even if. And it is the least expensive. I didn't really think that Razer was kind of in the higher end, but $49.99 ties for the cheapest mouse in their catalog. So you're not getting the 16,000 DPI, but you're still getting good performance.
Yeah, he said that with that mouse tester software, there were some anomalies at some of the very rapid movement. But he said it might be possible for a professional gamer, a professional like Twitch style gamer, to notice those differences, but he didn't. He said he didn't notice it, and most people probably wouldn't. So anybody else have any experience with this or the full flavored Basilisk mouse?
throw it against the wall just to see how many pieces it'd go. But, I don't have one with me. For $50, that would be fun once. Maybe.
True.
Whoa, what are we talking about, Josh?
Huh?
For $50,
You mean you don't throw away $50 just on a whim?
I mean, it depends on the
met
whim.
my wife?
Oh, okay. Actually, no, I have not. And
that's funny. I haven't met yours either.
Maybe they don't exist.
As long as we're
Anyway.
not getting into PC per wife swapping.
Oh God. Okay. Anyway, let's move on to the next.
I was waiting for that forced, quick, panicked transition.
It wouldn't be a show without one or two. So that was the Basilisk Essential Mouse, $50 from Razer, a recommendation from Chris on that. Next up, it's a review of sorts. It's a performance preview that Sebastian put together for us. Tom Clancy's The Division 2 launched recently, and he took this as an opportunity. Instead of looking at the game itself critically, we looked at how does it perform with a range of GPUs, and he tested 10 GPUs, sort of ranging from the mid-range to higher end, although not the highest end. So I don't know, what was the price range on these, Sebastian? It was probably like $200 to $500.
Yeah, actually, I saw at the low end. I was impressed because when I published this, the low end was actually under 190, like 187, 188 for an 8 gigabyte version. Well, I think all the 580s are 8 gigabytes, but anyhow, of an RX 580. So anywhere from around that 190 mark all the way up to the $699 Radeon 7 and RTX 2080. But I only tested those $700 cards at 4K. So the rest of the review is just taking a look at performance. Well, I tested it at 1440 Ultra as well. So
I was going to say, I'm looking at a picture that contradicts your statement there.
Once again, I have no idea what I'm talking about, Jim, and I'm the one who wrote this. But after hours and hours of benchmarking this with all sorts of different cards, and then updating to the latest drivers, trashing all those results and starting over again after a 17-hour marathon session.
Because game ready, you know what I'm saying?
Useless. Well, it was actually the AMD side. They came out with 19.3.2 about 8 hours after I started testing. Anyhow, it was very interesting, especially after I updated, because I will say going from 19.3.1, this tells you why you should always stay up to date on your graphics drivers, because I was getting huge performance increases of like 8, 10 or more frames per second just by updating the drivers. So anyway, looking at 1440p results, if you guys have had a chance to glance at this, right in the middle of the chart is very interesting because you have the Vega 56, which we've seen selling for as little as $269 lately. And I think when I published this, it was $289 after a rebate, so like $309 or something. 60 plus frames per second at 1440 Ultra settings, which was beating out consistently the RTX 2060, which starts at $349. So very, very good performance from AMD here. This is one of those games that has the AMD logos when you boot it up. It's a game that's optimized for Radeon, kind of like the Far Cry 5, another Ubisoft title, another game that's sort of Radeon ready, and especially running the latest driver. Great performance, not at the very top. The 2080 still managed to beat it out by about 4 frames per second at 1440. I took just the under $400 group. So leading off with the Vega 56 and down, and the Vega 56 was on top at 1080 Ultra. I mean, I don't know if you're buying a 2060 or a Vega 56 to game at 1080, but just to look at what the frame rates were like, and they were like 95 to 100 frames per second on average. This game is not an especially challenging game unless you crank the settings all the way up and play at higher resolutions. The performance kind of reminded me of the World of Tanks Encore benchmark, where you've got to put it at Ultra or you're way over 100 with almost every card. So anyway.
It's something that I was thinking about. The prevalence of 144 hertz, 144 hertz monitors is now widespread. I mean, it's, not every gamer obviously has one, but it would be interesting to test how much you could really maximize those kind of monitors in interesting environments, because Everybody kind of expects, well, 60 hertz is, what you need to be, 60 frames per second. But if you've ever experienced gaming at above 100 hertz or 100 frames per second, it's a significantly different experience. It's things are just smooth, things are just seamless. You just go, and especially with FreeSync and G-Sync, I would almost argue that a lot of these mid-range cards at 1080p should be going towards, that 120, 144 number. And if you can see in this one, they're not approaching that anywhere. And yeah, FreeSync and G-Sync will help to smooth things out. But boy, more is better in this. And after seriously 2 decades of study and thinking about it, the closer you can get to, 200, 250 frames per second and that kind of refresh, the more seamless things actually seem to you. I mean, there's been some really interesting studies, and I don't really want to go into these right now, but, the more input and more analog-like input that humans get, the better reaction we have, because it's more like the reality around us. And so, going to a digital world where 30 frames per second was once considered good, and it was fun because it was a new experience. Quake 1, Quake 2, you're all sitting around there. You've got 3D graphics for the first time, and you don't know anything different until you start getting faster and faster, and things start getting smoother, and turns are not chunky. Stuff is seamless. And so Division 2 is a beautiful looking game. And you run through there, the foliage is great, the lighting is great, and it's still hammering these cards, but you want those high frame rates. And so it's nice to see over 100 in some of these, but yeah, I kind of wonder if we shouldn't start focusing on getting, let's utilize these gaming monitors that run for 120 hertz to 144 hertz and, give the people what they want.
Yeah, I think you absolutely can hit those higher frame rates if you lower the quality settings down. Like, even high settings on this game look fine. Ultra, turn some other stuff on. You can actually crank it up a little bit beyond just the Ultra preset by manually adjusting things. But there is a happy medium in there somewhere. If you're favoring frame rate over detail quality, change the draw distance and move some sliders around. I'm sure you could hit those numbers. But in the end, it was basically a little bit easier on a system to run than I think Far Cry 5 is. So maybe a little bit more optimized, especially on AMD hardware, where even though they didn't have the overall lead at the very top, in the middle and towards the bottom, these older RX 500 series cards do quite well. And I think my conclusions were just if you're just speccing out a system or an upgrade to play this particular game, and especially if you're playing at 1080, even an RX 580 is going to play well over 60 frames per second on average, even if you crank it all the way up to ultra. So, if you're going for a higher frame rate, I don't know if the high frame rate, the high refresh monitor is the same market as the under $200 graphics card market. But
have you seen the prices on some of these monitors now?
I haven't priced out talking about a 144 refresh.
Yeah, I've got a VA panel downstairs from Acer. It's 144 hertz with FreeSync, and it's usually on sale for around 150, if not a little bit less, a couple bucks.
Nice.
I mean, they're dirt cheap.
That is, especially if it's a VA panel, because that'll have nicer blacks, better contrast ratio than a TN.
I mean, TN panels are like going up to 240 hertz. I mean, they're crap. I mean, I wouldn't do anything less than a VA, but this VA at 144 it's bright enough. It's obviously fast. It doesn't suffer from anything really that I notice other than it's slow to start up. I mean, I think this is a model issue, and I wish they had a firmware update or something for it, because when you turn on your computer, there's a good couple of seconds where it's just dead, and so you don't actually see the boot up screen, and it's bizarre. But anyway, that's a topic for another day. But these monitors are getting inexpensive. You can get a 27 inch for less than 200.
Oh, it's not bad.
Looking at an Acer ED242QR, AB IDPX because Acer has the best product
great names. Great
in the world.
names.
And it is $169 on Amazon. That's 144 hertz, 1080 monitor with a VA panel.
Yeah, that's nuts, isn't it?
That is the
it's
cheapest
awesome,
I think I've
but
ever
it's
seen.
nuts. Yeah, yeah.
I remember I ordered from, what was the name of that Canadian-based computer company? They had it was NCIX that went out of business, didn't they?
Yep.
Yeah, and I
Yeah, they did.
pre-ordered my first G-Sync 120 hertz monitor 7 years ago, and I was waiting anxiously, and it was $1,000, $1,100, something like that.
I put myself on mute because my kid is screaming in the background. It's awesome.
Well, what's he screaming about?
Never have children. About taking out the garbage. It's great.
A little late for most of us here for that advice, Josh.
I know. Well, except Jeremy. Run away, Jeremy. Run away.
Yeah. Still could make that mistake.
Well, let's
Satisfy myself with cousins and nieces.
You also took a look at 4K.
Wait, you're going to marry cousins and nieces? What?
No. Cousins and nieces
okay.
satisfy my child needs. Because I can hand them back. It's screaming about garbage. Here, you deal with it.
Josh only has one kind of need, and it must be met.
Oh, God. Okay.
Yes,
4K.
Jim. We
4K
did look
results.
at 4K results, Jim, and lowering things down to the high preset and adding the outrageously expensive RTX 2080 Ti to the mix. Our particular sample is the Asus Strix gaming card that was $1,299 on Amazon when I checked. And of course, that one is way out ahead. But when you look down in the 400 and up range, we're talking 400 all the way up to $1,200. This is where the game actually really does kind of bring the system to its knees a little bit. And even down at the high setting, we were only getting around 50 frames per second from a Vega 64 or an RTX 2070. And then moving up to those smoother 60 plus frames per second averages, right around 65, actually, a virtual tie between the Radeon 7 and the 2080 there. So another one of those games where AMD could point to the Radeon 7 as trading blows with a RTX 2080, which I kind of think is what their focus of this game launch was, kind of showing you how close AMD graphics are to Nvidia and how at the lower end, it's a better value. But yeah, I mean, I have no opinion of the game at all because I hate all games equally after benchmarking them extensively over days and days. So I really have
Hey, at least you didn't have
no
to benchmark
impressions.
Skyrim very much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before his time?
It's before my time, but it sort of came back a little bit when was it the HD texture pack that kind of brought it back as a legitimate benchmark again, but
Well, you can put some mods and some filters on that thing that'll bog down today's beefiest GPUs. So there's a market for it. It's not a big market.
That 1 out of 10 times that it actually launches successfully.
Well, that's true too. I mean, you can only, but you add a series of mods and then it all collapses on you. That's fun.
Yeah.
All right. So check that out at the site if you're interested in performance for Division 2 and see how your card or a potential card you want to buy performs. And let's jump into the news. Like I said at the beginning, we've got a ton of news this week. So first up is Nvidia had their GTC conference to start the week, and they announced a ton of stuff. First off is that they're bringing the real-time ray tracing support to Pascal-based GPUs with the April driver update. Tell us about this, Sebastian.
Just as you said, it's Pascal, and it's also the Turing GTX 16 series non-RTX cards. And apparently it won't be every feature, but I'm sure Josh will have a lot more to say about this than me when we consider that this is just one of those things you can do when you have fully programmable shaders. And what if we just allocate some of those shader cores to doing this fixed function instead of, obviously if we were to try to do ray tracing in software, that's not tenable at any kind of playable frame rate, but you can allocate resources to do it. And it's not as slow as I was expecting it to be. If you look at the charts NVIDIA provided, the maximum difference between like an RTX 2080 and using a 1080 Ti in like Battlefield, Metro Exodus, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which just got its DXR features enabled, is up to 3x, but that includes DLSS. So you take DLSS out of the mix, and now you're only like 1 to 2x difference. So obviously, touring is still the way to go if you want to do real-time ray tracing. But the fact that it is now available and that becomes the end user's choice is outstanding, and it's kind of obviously what they should have done from the very beginning, especially if it's
Kinda
as simple as releasing a driver.
Curious what SLI will do to that if you can just have one card. I don't know how in the hell that would work. It just depends on
kind of like
each frame is composited. But yeah, I don't know. It's just, I mean, programmable shaders, and it's all just math in the end. We like math, and math is a great thing, but tensor cores, because they're so dense and they only do a couple of things really, really well, you get really good experience from that. And then when you apply that to more general purpose, just as, GPU versus CPU, you have these GPU cores that do a couple of things really, really well as compared to something that is programmable and general as a CPU core. And you can see how, things kind of break down. And that's essentially what, tensor core are. They do matrices, I believe, and, some very, very simple math. And unfortunately, better or worse, that simple math is really good for certain workloads like machine learning and AI and some of their ray tracing stuff. And so it's cool that they've got the ability for you. I mean, if you've got a 1080 Ti and a 1080p monitor, you can enable these things and still have playable frame rates. And so it's nice that we have that option. We can see these things. It's going to sell more products for Nvidia in the end because, somebody's going to be a big BF5 user and they'll, do that. And they really like the extra shinies. And they've got, a GTX 1070 or a 1080, and they're more motivated to get a 2070. So I'm not sure why they didn't do this sooner. Maybe it's just a matter of software development and driver development, but I don't know. Maybe NVIDIA is kind of starting to see the light that, your consumers are your customers, and you probably should not try to alienate them.
Good
If nothing
advice.
else,
I mean, they already kicked it up with FreeSync. Opening up.
I mean,
the ability to use that.
Huge.
Absolutely.
That is a watershed moment for NVIDIA, and it's awesome. And I still need to do some testing on that in my house because I finally have graphics cards that can do that. But I don't know. I think this last year with they were probably feeling pretty good when they were selling, $3 billion a quarter worth of product. And then the crypto stuff, imploded. And a lot of criticism was aimed their way, the way they were kind of handling things with their consumer base. And now I think there's some shifting around, both, from AMD and NVIDIA. And they both kind of need to be more consumer centric, and this is a nice step up, so we can actually see what we're missing. All of us, 10 series GTX owners.
Yeah,
and that's the
Am I going
feeling
Firebrand
turning
enough
because
for y'all?
it was a little tame.
Firebrand.
I want to see a little bit more
Okay.
vitriol.
Yeah.
But think about it, like it's kind of like the 3D thing. Until people actually saw 3D TVs themselves and it was set up right and they had the right kind of glasses that worked for them, it was never going to take off. There's too many variables when you have competing technologies. Obviously, it's a stretch to compare this to 3D, but I mean the idea of
Are you
this
sure you want to
added
talk
effect-
about NVIDIA and 3D?
Well, right, yeah, because they got rid of that. But my point is, it's hard to sell stuff. Like 3D did not work in a TV commercial because it just doesn't work unless you have the equipment. So you couldn't say like, look at this cool 3D thing you want to go out and buy. You can show people YouTube videos of RTX features, and you have to say like, oh, pause here. Now look at the reflection on the the quarter panel of this car. Now watch the explosion again, but look at the quarter panel of the car. That's lame. It was pretty lame. So by saying, okay, you already have this game, turn this switch on, now play it. Tell me if it looks different. Tell me if the experience is better in the game, and if it motivates you to upgrade to a faster car because you're like, oh, dude, these features are so great, but I'm only getting 25 frames a second with my old 1070, and I could upgrade to this, 2070 and get, 40 frames per second with this feature turned on. It becomes something that you'd want to upgrade for. Just like since the beginning of this whole 3D gaming thing, when you'd get the game demo or the game, you'd play it on your existing hardware, and you might only get 10 frames per second. And it would motivate you to go out and buy an upgrade. What back in those days, it was usually buying a faster CPU because it was software rendered stuff in the Doom era. But if you got the faster hardware, you got faster frame rates and better gameplay. And I think it was way too much of a stretch to say, all right, here's this cool new feature you're going to start seeing in games, but you have to buy one of these expensive 20 series cards. So then it was easy to dismiss the whole thing as this is a gimmick. Who cares? They're just trying to sell graphics cards. I haven't seen it. I've seen YouTube videos. I don't care about it. So give people a way to do the demo at home. If they happen to have a 1080 Ti, they're probably going to be just fine if they're running at 1080. If you want to, better performance or higher resolution, you need to upgrade to one of their 20 series cards.
It's almost unfortunate that Best Buy didn't hire a bunch of Ryans to go into their store and do the actual 3D, glass technology. Do you guys remember that video? I know Jeremy does, but you other guys have you actually?
Oh, and Ryan actually went to the Best Buy. Yes, I have seen that.
Yes, that was. I mean, the gal is sitting there and she's wearing the glass, and she's going out there and trying to reach it and touch, and she squirms and yells, and it's just, that's the stuff that will sell this technology, but it's hard to get people to look at it, or at least have somebody around here that's going to show it to you so you can experience. I mean, how do you know? Have you seen the elephant? Have you seen it up close? No, most people haven't. So I don't know, but this is definitely a good step to see what RTX actually brings to the conversation.
Yep, and I want to jump in here real quick to answer two questions that have come up in the chat. First is, where's the rundown? Again, this is one of those, I guess people have missed the last couple months. The rundown is added in post now because we don't have the same setup we did at the studio to overlay it live. Possible to get that going, but it adds an additional layer of complexity I can't deal with. I'm already overwhelmed. So you want the rundown, check the on-demand version the day after. And the second point was people were pointing out that they miss Alan. And of course, everybody misses Alan, but one of the reasons they miss Alan is because everyone used to make fun of Alan, and it was really humorous. And I just want to point out, we can still make fun of Alan. Nothing's stopping us from making fun of Alan, so don't let that stand in your way, and let him have it. Alan Maltavino.
Or we could pick another target. Pick me. I'm easy to pick on. Make fun of me.
You're
skinny.
Gonna have to start reacting better,
Head of hair.
Yeah.
You're kind of
Yeah,
pale.
I need to work on my acting skills. That's for sure.
You have decent eyesight with contacts.
I don't wear contacts.
Oh, okay.
You bear a passing resemblance to an out-of-work sports announcer.
Yeah, I mean that's the goal. I cut all my hair off.
I mean, really. I mean, how many Mets fans in Michigan
I have an Alan-like appearance right now.
Are you wearing sweatpants in a what do you call it? A jogging jacket?
No, I didn't put on the sweatpants, but yeah, okay. I am wearing a jacket. It doesn't have fur lining and a hood, unfortunately, but I do have the Ellen hairstyle.
And at least once per episode, you have to look down at your laptop and just completely grow oblivious to everything around you. Like install a Windows update, play Factorio,
Facebook Messenger on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
I love you, Alan. We miss you.
And a little bit of cheesecake in a can.
Sure, never hurt. But one of the reasons that Nvidia may be playing nicer and doing some things recently that kind of more consumer friendly is there's a new layer of competition, and that is Google, as expected, made their announcement at GDC of Stadia, which is their upcoming online streaming gaming platform. And this, streaming on, games through the internet, that's not new. There's been a dozen different companies that have tried it. The thing that seems to be different about Google is they're easily the biggest to get into this game so far, in terms of just being a big company with the resources. They have a huge network infrastructure, but they also have all these other products that they're leveraging to expand on what this is going to be. So it's not just game streaming.
What, like
but
Google Wave and Google Plus?
Well, sure. Those more like YouTube and Gmail and Android and Chrome OS, and basically the point here is they tested this last fall with Assassin's Creed Odyssey. The point is that you can access these games on any device that runs Chrome OS or the Chrome browser. So that's pretty much every modern device on the planet: tablets, phones, desktop PCs, televisions, and it allows you as the user, as the account holder, to jump into a game and continue within seconds, they say, and then pick it up and continue it on another device seamlessly. Share that game, share like streaming, except you're streaming from their servers, so you can stream in high quality 4K 60, even if you don't have the upload bandwidth for that. And share, they have a sort of a save state kind of system where you can share your games with other people, or if you're a creator, this is a big creator focused event. If you're a creator, you can say, here, I'm streaming this game live, and here's the point I left off, and then just have a link, and whoever clicks on that link who's a member of this service can jump in and take over your game, either in their own instance or even in some cases take over for you, and then you stream what they're playing in real time. So it's very interesting. I think that for those who saw the announcement, the important thing to remember is 70% of what they said is complete and total bullshit. And I don't blame them. They're trying to present their product in the best light, and this was eventually where we're going. But all of it relies on a reliable, low latency internet connection. And they're doing some interesting things with multiplayer gaming to kind of eliminate the public internet so that you'd connect directly to Google, then Google would connect directly to your teammates or competitors, and stuff like that helps. But the whole thing kind of crumbles when you look at what the state of the internet is in the countries they're going to be launching in, which is US, Canada, UK, and they say most of Europe. There's parts of Eastern Europe that have really great internet, and there's parts of Asia that have really great internet, but US, Canada, UK, Australia, it's all garbage. I mean, it's low quality. I mean, there are some service providers that are good, but it's generally low quality, expensive, data caps, all the things that are going to hamper the adoption of this. So that's worrying. And I also, I don't know, did anybody get a chance to test the Assassin's Creed Odyssey experience that the test they did last fall?
No,
nobody. I got to play it for like 15 minutes. So I wasn't a member, but I had a colleague who had gotten into the beta, and I was on his laptop and I tested it for a few minutes. It was probably the second best streaming in terms of latency, but it's still, you can feel it. It was not, they started this conference off with all these reports of how awesome it was and how many users loved it and said they couldn't believe it. And again, obviously they're going to present it in the best light, but that is not reality. Maybe those people were on very good internet connections, in California, close to the servers, but out here in the Midwest, it was a noticeably latency filled experience. Image quality had some issues.
Maybe those people are just used to having 30 frames per second with VSync enabled.
That could be it. I mean, something like VSync. Yeah. So
no, I mean, I've been talking to guys for a while about this kind of stuff, and under 40 milliseconds is, you don't really notice it. Under 20 milliseconds, you don't notice any kind of latency at all. It all just feels real. But if you think about it, if you do ping tests from like Laramie to California, you're looking at 80 milliseconds for that. And then when you think about the round trip from input to all that and then back to you, that's without any kind of correction and whatnot, that's 180 milliseconds, 160, sorry, of latency that you have to deal with. And that's significant. It gets frustrating because somebody pops up and you move over there and you just it seems like it's forever because in a fast action paced game, that is forever. That's going to get you killed. That's back in the day of playing on dial-up modem, when you're 180 to 200 milliseconds, you see somebody pop on that's 80 milliseconds, and you call them a low ping bastard because they're killing everybody. It's the same thing. And so, I mean, yeah, they've got techniques to lower that perceived latency, but you're still dealing with physics. And
Yeah.
I've got a pretty good internet connection right now, and even then it's not always fantastic. And then guys like Spectrum do some really interesting things. Like, I know this is going way off course, but instead of going to the fastest route, they route you through the least used routes, yet stay under 100 milliseconds to get to where you're going. And so they utilize their entire infrastructure better, but they lower everybody's experience. And when you're talking about enterprise stuff, that's a big deal. When you're talking about this kind of gaming, that's an even bigger deal.
Yeah. I hear a cat in distress. I hope everything's okay.
I was going to say,
No, he's just bored.
Okay. We'll get him some
bored.
Get him some streaming games to play.
Well, he's standing over top of his dish and screaming at me because I'm not petting him when he's eating.
how much do you think their direct Wi-Fi connected controller will help cut down on that feeling of latency? Because that's the first for one of these services, right?
Yeah, that is, and just to clarify, that's they said that their controllers, if you can use your own controller through USB with your Chrome device, but they have a controller itself which directly connects over Wi-Fi to the server, the Google server. So that's cutting out a latency, a path for latency. That certainly can help. But again, as Josh said, it's a physics problem. There is an issue of physics and the speed of light that you cannot ever overcome. You can adapt to it, though, and it had me thinking about 2 years ago when the PS4 Pro launched. We did some tests on trying to measure disk performance because it had swapped from SATA 2 to SATA 3 in the Pro, and we discovered that a lot of games we couldn't actually test it because the developers of these games had foreseen the issues of disk access and coded their games around that. So there would be cutscenes at key moments where there was disk loading in the background, and it didn't matter that the game loaded faster. You still had to sit through the cutscene, or there would be things where it would just put you in a different. There would just be different ways to architect a game to take advantage or to avoid having those disk access speed issues. And if you look at this as a platform that will, this and other online services that will become the future, you can see games come out built for this that will eliminate the issue of latency or mask it, at least to a great degree. But I will point out too, the irony of all this is during that stream, because again, this all relies on the internet, the damn stream glitched out like a dozen times or half a dozen times. There was 5 or 6 points where the stream went to crap and got all pixelated and froze. So, and that was on Google's end of streaming that out through their own streaming through YouTube. So, ironic.
Yeah, a couple other little things. So one, I was absolutely wrong. Ping is round trip, so you don't double.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say that.
Yeah, thanks. And also, you do not also something that we didn't mention is that when the game does get the input from you, it still needs to process that, and when it's local to you, it's very, very quick. But that still adds another area of latency that adds onto that. And then we're not even talking about they're talking about 4K rendering. They have to have some serious not encryption but encoding on their end that is low bandwidth and high GPU CPU performance, whatever, to compress that as much as possible without all the fun artifacts that we tend to get. I mean, if you watch a live stream on Twitch or whatever, and even if they're playing at 1080p, immediately if you're watching something streaming versus you're watching something on your, that you're actually playing on your computer. Because, I mean, it's the human vision system notices strange things and oddities and stuff that's out of place. And when you're playing something locally, the artifacts that you see are typically like, anti-aliasing and whatnot. But when you're streaming something, then you're going to have encoding issues. You're going to have some, artifacts that just don't jive. And so there's a lot that they've got to go through for any kind of hardcore gamer to be able to do this. Casual gamers playing, Bejeweled Blitz and some other things that they're not going to notice. But if you're pushing, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Battlefield series and whatnot, it's a pretty big mountain to climb.
Yeah. And you've got to do that because otherwise, if it was lousily compressed 4K video, you'd be, average bandwidth limits out here in Canada and the US, that'd be 50, 60 hours of gameplay in a month, and you'd be blowing through your cap, assuming you didn't do anything else.
Yeah.
So that all adds, another level that at least makes it harder in this market. Overseas, they're a little bit better about meaning unlimited when they say unlimited. But it all reminds me back to when OnLive first started this whole idea. And they reached out to me, and I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll definitely try it out. And we did a couple emails back and forth. They were excited. And then they said, okay, so, and you guys, you're located with Ryan in Kentucky. And I'm like, no, I'm in Vancouver. Oh, we're not ready to roll it out to people there. And the tone totally changed to, oh shit, he's going to have a bad experience and we know it. And so they did actually do Ryan, and there was an interesting article put out of it where essentially he had probably a better experience than I would have, but still just not good. And it's been 5 or 6 years, but bandwidth caps, the basic internet plans that are available haven't changed. So it's kind of hard to see, as Josh says, how is Google going to get around that to provide something that's enjoyable?
And that article led to threats of lawsuits, as I recall.
Just a bit,
yes. Yeah.
Which also, as we'll talk about later, involved friend of the site, Cal Bennett, who, again, I was just a viewer at this point, but he stepped in and helped. And so from the PC Per, even though I wasn't part of it then, from the PC Per family as an entity itself, a big thank you to Kyle for his support back then. So that was interesting times as a reader, and then to join and hear the inside baseball side of that thing. But
oh, good God, that was 2010. It was even longer ago than I thought.
Yeah, when you said 5 or 6, I was thinking a little more than that. But
yeah.
But a lot of interesting things with Google. And another thing I don't like about it is that it's another step towards the elimination of game ownership and game control. I mean, they very proudly pointed out that there'll be no cheating and hacking, which is awesome for multiplayer. But I mean, in terms of single player, I love to cheat in single player games, because open world games where you can cheat and add a bunch of money or add invincibility. I play the game normally, and then I go back and play it with cheats usually, and it's a different kind of game. It gives you a different experience. And don't get me wrong, it's not about the concept of cheating. They will sell you cheats. That's really what it comes down to. You want more money? Oh, that's a microtransaction. And in some cases, not so much of a microtransaction, quite a big transaction. Look at what they did with GTA 5. It's they have no problem with people getting an unfair advantage. They just want to charge you for it. So I don't like where that's going. But we'll see. Google obviously is very earnest about this. Microsoft has got their service coming up. There's been rumblings about Apple. This is, something that this is a big factor in the future. I hope, though, that the market stays sane and that they view this as one option and not the be-all, end-all of gaming. So,
you know what I think it's going to kind of shake down to, and I don't mean to prolong this more than I should. This is going to appeal to those who probably wouldn't necessarily upgrade to a GPU, that they just buy an all-in-one kind of computer from somebody and wonder why their game plays so crappily. They'll get a good experience out of this. They won't know any better, but I still think that the core gaming market is still going to want to have as much performance in the box right next to them and as much control over it and again, ownership of this software that, OnLive folds, and the games you bought with them, they're gone, or however do they decide to make money off of that. And I think in the end, if they do it well, it's going to enhance the gaming market, just because there are more people going to play, and there are going to be some who will get into this stuff, who are going to use this Google thing and then go over to like a friend's house and like, hey, I recognize that game, let me play it. And they're like, this experience is so much sharper, so much crisper, so much more reactive than what I've been experiencing. Hey, maybe I'm going to go and purchase a better computer. I'm going to go and upgrade my GPU. I'm going to have these things loaded locally onto my machine, and I'm going to enjoy it and go from there. So it's and potentially it could be a win-win for everybody, because it exposes a larger market to the really interesting interactive gaming products that are out there.
Well, their motto is games for everyone, or gameplay for everyone, something like that. So they're thinking of it, but we don't know all the details. We don't know pricing. We don't know if is it a subscription, do you buy, or combination. All we know is they said it's going to be launching in 2019. So I assume late 2019, due to the lack of specificity there. So we'll be following that and see how that kind of comes together. I imagine that they're briefing developers broadly this week, so I assume we'll have some leaks from those discussions that might give us some more insight. But let's move on. We've got even more news. So Nvidia announced a GameWorks RTX API, I guess, and also alongside that, having RTX support with Unreal Engine and Unity built in. So why don't you tell us about this, Sebastian?
Yeah, I'm sure GameWorks is not going to be the most exciting thing for a lot of our viewers. It made sense that they would add RTX to the whole GameWorks ecosystem, and that's more interest to developers, and it's something that you'll see in Nvidia like enhanced games. And that goes along with, I believe, let's see, the components of the ray tracing GameWorks RTX is going to be ambient occlusion, ray trace reflections, ray trace shadow. So it gives developers tools to integrate those RTX features, which of course are going to be NVIDIA 20 series RTX features. I don't believe those are necessarily going to be the, DirectX 12 DXR features. But speaking of DXR, it was interesting. They mentioned on stage, and of course this week with GDC going on, there's a lot of talk about DXR, a lot of talk about things other than the sort of proprietary implementations of ray tracing we've seen to this point, where earlier in the week we saw CryEngine's. I don't think we have that on the news list, so I'll wait. But now Unreal Engine and Unity, the latest versions, are going to have real-time ray tracing support built in. So Unreal Engine starting with version 4.22, which is in preview, and then the preview version 2019.03 for Unity. And you're going to start seeing on the list Frostbite Engine, Northlight Engine, Kingsoft, et cetera, et cetera. And then I mentioned CryEngine already. We're going to start seeing the major game engines supporting this, so it's going to be a lot more prevalent. It's easy to argue right now. There's like 4 or 5 titles total that have any kind of ray tracing support. But and Nvidia themselves was showing another look at ray tracing in Quake, which we've been talking about since 2006. So new games on these very common game engines. Obviously, Unreal and Unity kind of dominate a lot of the market. So just interesting news, not necessarily NVIDIA specific news. Their news is just, that they're unlocking real-time ray tracing support for non-RTX cards, and that they are adding RTX to GameWorks. But
and so let's just keep rolling though. As you mentioned, Crytek's got a demo here for real-time ray tracing, right?
Yeah. And what was cool about this is the video they put out. If you go to the site, I embedded their video, which is on YouTube. It's called Neon Noir, which basically looks like somebody did a run through in the Blade Runner world, but using a drone instead of one of the flying cars. And it looks amazing. And that's like to me, this is the perfect demo for it. Maybe just because I'm a Blade Runner fan, but seeing that kind of really dark environment where you have like rain coming down. There's the reflections from the neon lights, the reflections off of buildings and signs, and there's an added depth to it that you do actually palpably see watching this. And what was cool is this was all done on a Vega 56, not even a 64, not a Radeon 7, just a Vega 56. They run this at 4K 30. So not high frame rate. And obviously you'd have to get a beefier card to go up to 60 frames per second with this, but it's coming to the game engine. They're part of their total illumination package within CryEngine. And at some point this year, we're going to start seeing this available to developers, real-time ray tracing, reflections within this game engine. So just another example of, non-RTX specific DXR real-time ray tracing, which I think it'll become commonplace enough that we won't be having the argument like, is this just a fad? If it's platform agnostic and it's API agnostic, because the other interesting thing about this, and I'll wrap this up, is that it's not a DirectX 12 implementation. It works on Vulkan as well as DX12. So we could see this running on a Linux game or a Linux version of a game. So even better.
Awesome. And continuing GPU technology news, an announcement from Microsoft that they are adding variable rate shading to DirectX 12. And this is something that the latest NVIDIA GPUs already have built in, I understand. But this would be something that Microsoft is adding right into the DX12 APIs. So I know Scott wrote this up. Josh or Jeremy or Sebastian, do you guys have any thoughts on this?
Okay, so basically variable rate shading is there are going to be areas of the scene that do not need, the full precision shading required. So you do something in FP32, right? And you do it across the whole scene, except that there's let's say there's a water scene and you've got some deep dark water with a couple of specular highlights on there. They may not need the full FP32 precision. You can go down to FP16 or FP8 or INT8 or whatever. And so, instead of wasting all of these resources doing something that's very, very simple and does not need that kind of precision, it falls back on this variable rate shading that does kind of the best visual quality for the processing needed. And sometimes that could be really, really, really simple. I mean, you only need to have a couple of passes on a single pixel and doesn't need to have the full FP32 treatment. And so this is a good thing in terms of performance, and it's not going to impact you visually. And so it's a smarter way of doing as much work with as few resources as possible while still focusing all the really heavy duty processing on areas that need it. And then, not worrying about the stuff that happens to the side that necessarily doesn't. So you're looking at Civilization, I believe. And if you look at, you've got some good shading going on and shadowing and whatnot. And my phone's ringing and stuff on the land masses, and you've got snow and you've got effects. And then you've got those deep, dark ocean spaces that there's nothing going on. So if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see the stuff that is more intensely shaded, that requires higher precision, and that's the land masses where you have vegetation and light interactions. And then you've got the blue parts, which are just the oceans with maybe some specular to them. I mean, it's why waste more performance on something you don't need to? And so variable shading it's a really smart way of doing things. You're focusing your performance, your computation to the areas that need it most, and then don't worry about the stuff that doesn't need it. It's not going to enhance your experience whatsoever.
Yeah, and Microsoft, these images we were showing you are from Microsoft's blog post about this. They tested Civ 6, and you can head over to their blog post that we've linked to and read their full explanation and see the comparisons they did with it on and off. Be sure to check that out. More NVIDIA news. They have a bunch of server announcements that Jeremy wrote up for us. So why don't you tell us about this?
Well, I mean, do you remember the T4 GPUs coming out about a year and a half ago?
No.
Well, it was
No.
August of 2018, right?
Yeah. And it was impressive, but it didn't really get much coverage because, in one sense, it was like, what am I supposed to do with that? Well, today they've sort of explained why this is actually kind of an interesting product. They've got partners with Cisco and Dell, and a whole bunch of other people shipping physical equipment. And you can also get instances on Amazon and Azure now, which are powered by these T4 GPUs, up to 40 of them, which give an immense amount of HPC processing power. I mean, these are the ones that are specifically designed for machine learning and doing interesting stuff with AIs. And one of the nice things about it is that they're 70 watts of power consumption, which is, significantly less than the Teslas that we've been seeing in the previous versions. It makes it a little more interesting for these companies to pick it up because your electrical bill isn't going to raise your server rental prices immensely. Now, along with this comes a whole bunch of software. They've got the NGC software, which is designed specifically to run on these and takes advantage of their CUDA-X AI, which, as the name sort of implies, is specific to be running on CUDA cores. Now, it all of a sudden puts them into a market they've only ever sort of put their toes into and never really went further than that. You could build one on your own, but they weren't sort of pushing them out there. Now they've got major partners, which are, as of today, selling these things, and you're going to be able to make some really, really interesting things. For instance, the one that they really talked about is NVIDIA's Drive Constellation, which Josh is probably going to try and desperately get into. The whole idea is that you create this playground to train instances of self-driving cars. And so they are learning in this huge world filled with all sorts of cars, all powered by these T4s. And is probably also just an amazing driving simulator because the couple of screenshots they show are just stupidly gorgeous. It's a big thing for NVIDIA to be able to sell these. And one of my speculations, and this is just purely guessing, they just picked up Mellanox, right, which is known for high-end network and interconnect stuff. Why sell just the graphics card when you can be selling most of that box? So the way that it's talking to the boxes in a big rack is also built in-house by NVIDIA. Depending on how they leverage Mellanox's stuff, they could be building direct-to-provider sort of things, or just, instances all across the world, so that now you can be just pulling this stuff out of the cloud, as per the Azure and Amazon Web Service deals. And now NVIDIA's, not just making money off the cards, they're making money off of almost an entire box that is then just being finished off by Dell or HPE or whoever, which could be really, really interesting in a year or two, depending on how well this takes off.
Awesome. All right. Now we're just going to take a quick break to thank one of our sponsors this week. Like many of you, I'm a parent. My son is 6 years old, and I often find myself envious of the technology he's had access to his entire life. He doesn't know a world where tablets, video games, on-demand videos, and the ability to find almost anything instantly via the internet don't exist. But as awesome as these advantages are, I also often worry about the downsides of technology. Using a tablet all day at school and at home doesn't require any real tactile experiences, and the ease of access to information and entertainment doesn't challenge him to think and explore. And that's why I jumped at the opportunity to try KiwiCo, which is a company that merges the benefits of new and old to provide kids of all ages with the ability to play and learn from a creative, hands-on experience. With KiwiCo, each month you and your child receive a project crate that's targeted to your child's age and interests, from arts and design to geography and culture to science and engineering. The crates come packed with everything you need for each project, allowing your child to work alone or with you to create something fun and educational. And that's really what's special about KiwiCo. Completing each project gives your child something real and tactile that they can be proud of. It gives them a sense of accomplishment. They figured out the instructions, overcame the challenges, and thought critically about a real-world, hands-on task. They built this. And once the project is complete, there's also a book or magazine in each crate filled with fun activities. Of course, there are lots of physical, hands-on activities out there for children, but KiwiCo gives you this experience conveniently. There's no need to shop for supplies or have supplies go to waste. You and your child can simply look forward each month to a fun educational experience that's delivered entirely right to your door. And there's no commitment. Simply choose the crate that matches your child's age and interest and have it delivered to your door in just a few days. You can pause or cancel your subscription at any time. My son loved his KiwiCo crate and immediately demanded to know when the next one would arrive. And I bet your child would have the same reaction, so we want you to try this out for yourself. Change the way your kid plays with KiwiCo. Visit kiwico.com/PCPer and get your first crate free. That's KIWICO.com/PCPer for your first crate free. kiwico.com/PCPer. We thank KiwiCo for their support of the PC Perspective podcast. All right, back to the show. Moving on with the news, we've got even more NVIDIA announcements, and this is the Creator Ready driver program. We know we have the Game Ready driver program. We know they have their professional drivers. This is something in between. It's meant for people who are looking for consumer GPUs because of the price to performance benefit, but they don't need the absolute. They're not going to be buying a Quadro because they just don't need that level. But they're looking for professional performance in consumer GPUs, and so that's basically what this driver tier is going to do for you. So if you're that kind of person where you're using Premiere, using Blender, you're gonna and you're doing it for professional reasons, so you need stability and optimizations for those types of applications on your GTX or RTX card. This is what you're going to sign up for. And we haven't tested this, but NVIDIA is teasing some not insignificant performance gains. They say that there's up to 13% performance increase for Blender, 8 and 9% increases for Cinema 4D and Premiere Pro, Photoshop. So an interesting debut here for games, or I'm sorry, for professional application optimized drivers for your consumer cards. So what does everyone think about this?
This is on the same hardware, right? This is not requiring the professional level cards.
No, this is from what I understand, and Josh has left us, unfortunately, so ignore the upper right corner. But this is your RTX, your GTX card, but again, we have to test this. So the idea is that your professional drivers for your Quadro cards, those are going to be like the absolute highest performance or absolute highest stability for those critical applications. This is something in between GeForce Ready or Game Ready and those. So it's tuned for those. The release schedule is also going to be matched up to the release of these apps. So you'll see, just today, we see a Game Ready driver right after the launch of a big AAA game. With these, you'll see a Creator Ready driver launch after the yearly or every biennial updates to the Creative Cloud, the Photoshop and Premiere and stuff like that. So an interesting move on NVIDIA's part, I think.
They're bundled right into the GeForce experience, so you can literally pick and choose which one you're updating from within the app. Yeah. And Josh,
Scott,
oh,
sorry. Go ahead, Sebastian.
Oh, is Josh back? Okay. I was going to say, Scott characterizes this as at the bottom here. He says, some more steady driver schedule, some creative application performance enhancements at the expense of a little performance near the launch of major video games is how he was seeing this. So,
yeah, and we see this on AMD's side too, where they've got the professional drivers and the game drivers for certain cards, like the Radeon 7. And if you want a game and gaming is your focus, you would go with the game drivers because those are optimized for gameplay rather than stability or professional performance. So you make up your mind. But it looks like just like it does on the AMD side, it looks like this is going to be easy for users to switch depending on their needs. So you can work all week and play all weekend just by switching over which driver you're using. And
consistency is a great thing, especially when you're dealing with software and you're developing something that's really, really tough. Because say NVIDIA, updates their drivers to something that fixes a problem with another application, but it breaks yours. And you've got this, kind of foundational software that you can use to develop, and it makes your life a little easier.
Yep. And so
easy is good.
It is. So be on the lookout for that. The initial release is Creator Ready Drivers 419.67. So check that out if if that use case fits what you do with your consumer level NVIDIA card. Moving on to additional news here, we had some announcements from Oculus out of GDC. They have now the Oculus Rift S, which is a what was the Rift they launched last year? The sort of mobile. It was the Rift, the lower end Rift.
Kodak or something like that.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
I can't remember, but so they had like a lower end Rift model that they released last year, where it's like sort of like it's powered by a Qualcomm Snapdragon chip, the Quest, yes.
Wow.
And then this is the Rift S is a higher end model that is more similar to the previous desktop class Rift interface, but without external cameras. All the sensors are built into the headset, so it's a much cleaner setup, much easier setup and usage. But it drops the AMOLED screens as one of the sacrifices. So it's LCD based displays, still higher resolution, but you're going to lose those blacks. And it also surprisingly lowers the resolution. I believe that the refresh rate, I'm sorry, not the resolution, the refresh rate. The refresh rate is now 80 hertz instead of 90, which is interesting. Although the people were basing this story off of, which was it Anantech or no, it was Ars Technica.
Yeah.
They so we haven't tested this ourselves, but they tested it and said that even at 80, it's okay. It wasn't too bad. So interesting to see them go to an unusual refresh rate like that and to take it down, because the goal is, as Josh mentioned, with higher refresh displays in general, is go higher and higher, because the faster the refresh rate and the more detailed, the higher the resolution, the easier it is to trick your brain into thinking it's real and prevent motion sickness and things like that. So something to check out. $399, I believe, is the price. Launching later this year, this spring.
And the other fun thing about it is, I'm just trying to see if I can find what they called this feature, but it's see-through. So there is a mode that you can set it to so that you're able to see a black and white version of what's going around you. So as opposed to having to just yank it off to try and figure out what the hell that noise was, it'll let you see through it, which is, a pass-through plus is what they called it. So it's, a nice idea. It saves you from breaking completely out of that the VR experience when you're trying to look around and see what's going on around you, or what was that thing that you just punched in when you didn't mean to, but in the virtual world it was a really good punch and something broke in the house. So it lets you see through it, which is nice.
Hopefully not a pet or child, or spouse or roommate or whatever. Hopefully inanimate destruction. All right, so check that out. Anybody else have any thoughts on that, on the Rift S?
Cheaper is good, and losing OLED makes sense. That's the most obvious cost-saving measure. But I'm still not sold. The only VR experience I've ever had that I thought was good was a demo at CES a couple of years ago, where they were showing off a prototype headset that had eye tracking built in, and obviously these devices are not going to have that. I would assume not going to have that at the $399 price point. So you're still moving your entire head all around to look inside the game. So
yeah,
and this isn't. It's not positioned to be the best experience. It's positioned to be affordable, attainable. So something to
and they're still
keep an eye
saying
on.
like a 1070 will run it. They're suggesting you might want better than that, but
I think they even said something. I think they said it was it a 1060 even was the minimum spec.
Yeah, 1060.
So yeah. So all right, well that's the Oculus Rift Oculus Rift S $399 coming out soon this spring, they said. So next up on the news, we've got just a brief update on Spoiler, which was the latest speculative execution vulnerability that came out. I think it was March 1st. So just earlier this month, it was
the
unveiled.
absolute best thing about this.
What's that?
Go back to that page. You said spoiler, and look to the right.
Look,
there's a spoiler.
Spec D tuning. GG1.
Yeah.
Look,
oh shit! Acer must have made it.
Yeah, that's
with a name like that. That's an Acer product.
Every time
GT001 DD52.
every time you hear a company on stage talking about AI and how it's, Skynet is here, don't worry, because this is still AI in action right here. This is the state of AI. As they see the word spoiler, because this module on the website looks for common words and then displays related products. So, and two of them, we got a 2-for-1.
Ooh, I'm looking at that wing spoiler. It's only $56.99.
Yeah,
Is it
4 out of 5 stars
compatible
on
with the
Amazon.
9700K, or do you need an adapter?
You mount those things with wood screws
yeah.
and child skulls underneath the.
Do you think they added?
anyway.
Now think about it. The added downward force from one of those wing style spoilers would give you considerably more airflow, depending on the speed that you're traveling, depending on the aerodynamics of the car. But we could talk about air cooling systems passively, but once you attach it to the back of a car, the spoiler makes a big difference. We're going to talk about a lot this month, I think, during our extended enclosure open test bench on trunk enclosure. I don't know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'll get one and I'll put it on my minivan. So,
Oh no.
test it out.
Okay.
Yeah. And I want to just clarify, because I know a good chunk of our audience is audio only. An ad popped up on the site for car spoilers, not this particular processor vulnerability. So anyway, spoiler is the latest vulnerability or the latest announced speculative execution vulnerability. The authors of the paper said it targeted Intel processors going all the way back to the initial Core series, and there was the belief initially that this did not affect AMD or ARM processors, and AMD itself released a support document a few days ago that confirmed that, and it just said that basically spoiler works by looking, and spoiler itself isn't a vulnerability. I mean, it is, but it doesn't do anything bad by itself, but it makes things like rowhammer easier to execute because it's able to map virtual to physical memory, or able to reveal the mappings between the virtual and physical memory. And that occurs according to AMD, it's accessing partial address information above address bit 11 during load operations, but AMD CPUs don't store any data above bit 11, so there's nothing there to exploit or grab. So good to see that your AMD processor is immune from at least this one. And who knows, there's still a lot of debate out there about, is Intel more susceptible based on the decisions they made, or is Intel more susceptible because they have a majority of market share, and so that's where the people looking for these are looking? And, it's a little bit of both, I think. What do you think, Josh? Nothing? Josh?
I was actually thinking about variable rate shaders and how I screwed up that conversation.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I checked out. Now, what are we talking about again?
So my question
We're talking about spoiler, right?
Because we now know that AMD and ARM is not affected by spoiler. There's some question as to are Intel parts just generally more susceptible to speculative execution because of the decisions they made in the design, or is it just that Intel has the majority of market share, and so that's where the effort is being placed both amongst those who are researching this as well as those looking to exploit it maliciously? They're just looking at Intel more carefully to find this kind of stuff.
There's more than one way to skin a cat. I think that's primarily where we're getting to, is that Intel chooses to do a thing a certain way, and they can extract more performance with the structures that they have. And I think there's some give and take there. I mean, when you want to try to grab as much performance as possible, the way you lay out the transistors, the way you have your structures architected. I mean, there could be more ways to, kind of hack that and exacerbate some of the properties to get back this information. And, maybe AMD stuff is maybe not well designed, but they're not as performance enhanced, not as, kind of picking apart things that Intel does. They've got, thousands of engineers more than AMD, and they can really focus on that design, but you're going to introduce certain physical properties just because of the way you lay things out. And, it kind of seems like, Rowhammer and Spoiler and Spectre and some of these things that they are open up to this. And I don't know if this is, just total, if you design for absolute cutting edge performance, are you opening yourself more to these things? Or, I mean, we're just talking billions of transistors. And this is almost a chicken and the egg kind of argument. I mean, can you design something fast that won't have these issues? Or if you, try to harden it, do you open up other things that you don't foresee? I mean, there's a lot of clever people out there, and these is where these exploits come from. And I mean, can you out-engineer every single potential error? I don't know. That's a really
and how many years of development do you want to? How many years of development do you want to spend hardening a processor against attacks you don't even know exist at this point? Right? Like the market is such that even though we're sort of stuck in a bit where they're just doing iterative updates, it's not major architecture changes every time like it used to be, they're still pushed. I mean, if you're not getting 2 new lines out a year, people are looking at you funny. Investors are starting to take the money away. So, is it worth spending the time to, okay, this works brilliantly, it's actually better than the competition, it's better than our previous model, but Bob over here wants to spend 1.5 years making sure that it's secure? Or we could just start selling it tomorrow. And honestly, I mean, how much does this hurt sales of Intel? For me, it's a terrifying life experience day in and day out. Not just for Intel, but like Dell and their bloody server management stuff that still hasn't been patched after 2 years. It's a scary world out there, kids. And part of it is because we have to do things very quickly. And I'd love to be able to say that AMD is less vulnerable because it was their plan all along. I don't think I'd be very truthful if I did say that, though.
Yeah, it's kind of luck of the draw.
Yeah.
All right. Now, do we need to redo something for the variable rate shading?
Why don't I just mention it here? So Scott told me that I screwed up variable rate shading. There are variable rates that I have talked about in the past that in the article where they use different data formats to render. But in this case, say like everything is FP32, just for consistency's sake, you could do variable rates. Like you apply this to 1 pixel, the precision and whatnot, or the same color and that to 1 pixel. But then variable rate is if you've got large areas where you can do 1 by 2 pixels and it won't affect the image quality, you can do that. So like in those deep water, they all kind of look the same. So instead of, individually processing each pixel, it just says, hey, here's a rate here that you can do 1 by 2 or 2 by 2. And so you've got these big blocks that are just kind of replicated because they're very, very similar, and you're not going to catch a lot of this stuff. That's the variable rate that Scott was talking about. So my apologies for screwing that up.
No problem. It happens.
To me, more often.
Now explain variable rate investments.
Yeah.
No.
All right, let's finish up the news. We've got another GPU related story. This is AMD with their latest Adrenalin 2019 edition driver, 19.3.2, is bringing that Windows 7 DX12 support we mentioned a few weeks ago. And it's important again to reiterate here, this is not just DX12 for Windows 7 in general. It's not like as a user, you're going to install the DirectX 12 APIs on your Windows 7 machine and game with all your latest games. These are specific games that have been where the developers have worked with Microsoft. And initially, that's basically World of Warcraft, although there's some additional games here that they mentioned, Civ 6 and Division 2. No, I'm sorry. Those games are just regular performance improvements. But for the games like World of Warcraft that will come out with DX12 support, it's specific parts of the API that can result in performance improvements and simplified development for the developers within the game itself. So that's how you'll experience this. You'll have an update to your game, you'll have an update to your graphics driver, and then you'll get ideally a performance boost, moderate performance boost in your Windows 7 based games.
Yeah, the big thing with World of Warcraft was that 8.1.5 patch, better multi-threading, so substantially higher frame rates with that very much CPU-bound game. And then it was surprising because it came from Microsoft that they were going to be unblocking developers from taking advantage of the DirectX 12 stuff. So we kind of speculated, I think it was last week, about this, whether this would come in the form of driver updates. And sure enough, AMD's next driver update, which added support for Division 2, it's like, oh, by the way, also DirectX 12 on Windows 7 is included with this. So it is something apparently their GPU vendor does have to support. And then it's unlocked to the developers on Microsoft's side, and then they can submit a patch so that it all works together. And clearly, Blizzard has a huge user base on Windows 7, or they would not have gone to the trouble of probably begging Microsoft to do this for them. Maybe some money was involved. Who knows? I'm cynical, but interesting nonetheless to see who takes advantage of this for an operating system that's EOL.
Yeah.
With this and the telling us straight out, don't use IE11 anymore, just bloody stop, and Edge is going to be Chrome. I'm starting to worry if, maybe there's a little bit of lead poisoning or mercury in the food at Microsoft right now. It's a strange world.
Satya's, he's been singing this tune since day one. It just took a while to stick, I guess.
Okay.
The old Microsoft is dead. Long live Microsoft.
And just eat some lead paint chips while you're at it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we'll see. We'll see how this all works. But we'll also see how much of a disaster the end-of-life Windows 7 notifications become. Because the initial experiences I've heard, I haven't seen any personally in my VMs yet, but apparently they're saying, hey, it's time to, just like the Windows 10 upgrade, it's time to do something. But in the Windows 10 case, it was get your free upgrade. In this case, it's go buy a new computer, is what they're literally saying to people through the initial testing of the notifications. Come check out the latest PCs. Spend $1,000.
Yeah, this notification sponsored by Best Buy and HP.
Yeah.
Yes. I haven't checked it in a while, but the last time I did one, the Windows 7 keys still activate Windows 10 just fine.
Yeah, the keys, if it's a retail or a volume license or a TechNet key.
OEM, not so much, but...
Yeah, OEMs and even if you had an upgrade key, like if you had a key that came as like part of it, like if you bought the Windows Vista to 7 transition and you got like an upgrade key, those apparently aren't working. So, but yeah, I've got a hoard of TechNet keys from back when that was still a thing before everyone ruined that. And those still work just fine. Digital entitlement, they call it. So, well, let's round out the news here. As we alluded to earlier, a big surprise, at least to us, earlier, was it yesterday? When we heard that another one has bitten the dust. ardOCP, Kyle Bennett, who's been around forever. The ardOCP forums, the reviews and news, it's all going away. Well, actually, the forums are still going to stay up, I guess, but the reviews are stopping. Kyle has gone to Intel, joining Ryan, Ken, Alan, Chris Perillo, and about a half a dozen other media people they've have picked up in the last 6 months. So
What, Scott?
Oh, Scott
No,
went
wait,
to AMD.
Scott went the other way, didn't he?
Scott
Yeah,
Lawson.
sorry,
we're
Scott
talking about
went the
Scott
other way.
Wasson. Yeah, Scott Wasson is AMD Radeon. But
Because, I mean, Ryan, I can see making the shift into corporate culture. Ken is probably having great difficulties. Kyle, on the
Done
other
the
hand,
mineral oil?
yes, Kyle made his mark as an independent
Firebrand?
voice. Yes.
Yeah.
And he always he stood up. He made enemies proudly, and stood his ground. And that drew a lot of controversy towards him from
Can
companies
you open
and
carry
users.
in the Intel offices?
I don't know. Maybe in the Texas branch.
I think he's going to find out.
Yeah. So he is going on. What's his title here is effective
He's
April
the
1st.
director of enthusiast engagement, which sounds
Yes.
totally like a real job.
Well, I mean, who knows with what, Intel snapping up all these media people, not us, unfortunately.
And you know what? People pay millions of dollars to influencers.
Mm-hmm.
True.
And so Kyle at, a six figures is probably a bargain for these people who look at Twitter and YouTube and, the influencer
Instagram
type circles. Yeah.
And I get what he's
And his parents didn't pay for him to go to a higher education thing where everybody then gets
that we
mad
know
at
of
him and pulls, his endorsements and ad revenue.
Oh yeah, I didn't know what you're referring to initially there, but yeah.
And now you do. Yeah. Anyway.
I should ask, does anyone need to update their resume?
Their
clarify
CV? Yeah.
clarify any credentials? No? Okay.
I got in without my parents' help, and I was actually a member of the Boston University crew team, and I actually rode. So I wasn't just, a crew team recruit.
Yes. But were you making YouTube videos? No, you weren't.
There was no YouTube in 1990.
Hey.
There were some MySpace videos, but they were recently lost.
Yes, that's true too. But yeah, so Kyle explains it here that he was trying to think about how can he, from this point on, this industry is really tough. It's changing. Everything's changing. YouTube is a competitor. It's a different style over there. How can he continue to fulfill, his mission of being a what's the word I'm looking for? A champion for the enthusiasts. And, what he and what others have in response to this have said is, with him and others like Ryan and stuff going, they can finally tell Intel what the enthusiast community wants, because Intel hasn't gotten it right in recent years. They've either missed the mark in terms of performance to price, or they're investing in the wrong areas, or they're not, they were sat on their laurels too long and let AMD catch up, and now, which is good, I think, but now Intel is struggling to catch up, so to speak. So having guys like this there to tell them what we actually want as enthusiasts is good. On the other hand, it's troubling. I mean, at first it was kind of funny as we saw name after name fall. It's becoming a little disturbing because you don't want to have a company just buy the press, right? And obviously they have a long way to go. There's still a lot of voices out there that are independent, but it is it's interesting to see so many respected veteran people now on the Intel payroll. And it's, I don't want to be unfair, but when that happens, they lose their objectivity, because that's what it is.
Correct.
You can't.
But I would like to be objectified.
Well, sure. And I love Ryan and Kyle and everyone who's gone, and I don't think they're being dishonest. I think that they're doing it earnestly, but they're not going, if Intel makes a mistake, they're not allowed to call it out, whether they want to or not. That's just not how the deal works. They're part of a company now. They're paid by that company. They're beholden to that by their contracts and employment agreements. And it's unfortunate to lose that. And the hope, though, is that they make up for it, that the contributions they can make to directing Intel and to helping Intel understand its users and where they should take the company, that benefit outweighs their loss to this community. So wish him the best. Thank him for years, decades of work and contributions to the enthusiast community. And this is a big change for him, just like it was for our crew that left. And just as we did with our crew, we wish Kyle all the best, and hope he brings a lot of that spunk to Intel and get some moving in the right direction. So
the thing to me is, basically, if you look at it from the outside, you think, well, Intel is just hiring away these. Like, between Ryan and Kyle alone, they got like 40 years in the industry of independent reviews and the ability to be critical, the ability to have enough influence. You know, Kyle and Ryan had quite a bit of influence, and they could have a pretty substantial reader base, and their voice could be heard. But if you look at it from the other perspective, they're offered a job where, you know, they have problems with the corporate culture, they have problems with the company. The company comes to them and says, what do you have a problem with? And you can have an open dialogue with them, be as critical as you would like in the interview process. And then they say, what would you do if you worked here? And then you can lay out all of these ideas, and they're like, all right, well, we want to hire you to do that. It sounds great. It's only going to last for as long as their immediate upline is okay with this. Like, your job is only as good as your boss.
Oh God, yeah.
And so if it sounds great right now, and they're creating job titles for press, like this title that Kyle has acquired, it's probably created just for him, and it was part of the negotiation process of like, we'd like to bring you on board. We think this would be great for Intel, and you speak for the community. You can be a community champion. We want you to interact with people. He talked about boots on the ground, like going to shows, talking to people about what their needs are. Intel is not doing this out of like kindness. They're doing this because they're launching a new discrete graphics product soon, and they want people who can speak to the enthusiast sector because they want enthusiasts on board with this. It's an untapped market for them. Right now, they're integrated graphics,
With their new IGP?
and they make a lot of money. Yeah. So they've got Gen 11 graphics coming. That's something, but dedicated graphics are the enthusiast side, and that's what Kyle represents. So as long as they let him do his thing, it'll be good for him. And at some point, it may sour, and he may leave. But we will see.
Yep. And
Intel doesn't have a history of turnovers in vast numbers.
The tech sector in general, I think that applies to. But just I don't think we were clear. So he is, as part of his departure, unlike what happened here at PC Per, he decided he didn't have a team in place that he wanted to hand it to. So he's ceasing new content. I believe the site's going to like be archived, so it'll remain there. But ardOCP will not publish any new editorial content, and then the forums will continue on, funded through their Patreon program, basically just to pay the server costs and stuff. So, the forums thankfully will stay, at least for now, and a loss in the sense that we won't get any new content there, editorial content, reviews and such.
And subscribers to our mailing list will be able to download a new hosts file, which will direct ardOCP back to us.
Sure. No, that's just a joke. But hey, yeah, if you were a hard OCP regular visitor, we're still here. We're still kicking. Intel hasn't hired me, which they wouldn't. I'm not nearly as qualified or as experienced. But I would totally sell out for $1 billion, just so we're all on the same page.
Or even less.
No, to anyone. It doesn't have to be Intel.
Yes, anyone. Summer's Eve.
Jim, would you sell out right now for $5 million?
$5 million to which company?
Yes, $5 million. Any company.
Not to any company.
Really?
Monsanto
approaches you. Price here.
Monsanto
approaches you.
If C Media somehow came up with $5 million to buy you, you would say no?
Well, not to C Media.
I don't care. Any company. Dude, if somebody came out to me and said, Josh, sell out for $1 million, I'd be like, all right.
Yeah, I guess.
To Ashley Madison.
But I mean, there's going to be a high tax rate on that initially, and then I've got to.
All right, after taxes. Look, you drive a hard bargain, Jim. What if I offered you $5 million after taxes?
$5 billion?
$5 million, not
million.
Billion.
Okay,
million.
After taxes, yeah, I guess so.
And all you have to do is be a
$5 million, for the love of.
Yeah, just be smart. And all you have to do is go around and be a brand ambassador.
But for what?
An influencer
for a company.
For Summers Eve.
Yeah, an influencer.
Like, would it be?
Here's what you have to do, Jim. You take revealing pictures of yourself and post them to Instagram, but in the text mention like, "Oh, I love the way my house smells today with my Glade air freshener."
But I already do that.
Oh, okay. I haven't been.
Don't knock his hobbies.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
All
we
right.
all
Well,
got a
that's
price, but there's very few people who are going to pay it.
Yes.
And so we're here, being
That's
moral, ethical individuals,
sort of
because nobody has met our price.
right.
Because
right.
we don't have a choice, right?
Because
Well,
nobody
that
has
too.
offered us a price. Yes.
All right. Well, those are the rest of the news items. Let's jump into the picks of the week. So, Jeremy, I think you're up first. I forgot a pick because I was dealing with that webcam issue. So,
Threadripper.
Threadripper is my pick.
Threadripper 19.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Stupid
Oh.
good deals on them.
So my pick is the Threadripper, the 1900, 1900X and the 1920. I'm told, which the 1900 is the 8-core 16 thread from the initial first gen Threadripper, and that is going right now on Amazon for $309.99. So quite a deal there. And the 1920 is only about $50 more, $356.08. Hard to argue with those prices.
Obviously, a board is still going to cost a lot of money, but
About
now
that
your
much
total
money, yeah.
investment, yeah. So once you spend about $275,
don't forget
looks
the
like you get a
DDR4.
gigabyte board.
Yeah,
Oh,
you got to have
I mean-
the DDR, and fast DDR4, ideally.
Yeah, it's still gonna break $1,000, but it's fun. It truly is. These things are a lot of fun. They got personality and a lot of processing power.
They do. So then, thanks to you guys for that recommendation, and Jeremy, you have a pick as well.
Oh God, yeah. This is Rogue Tech, which is not quite a complete conversion of the BattleTech that Harebrained Schemes put out that we're slowly waiting for them to come up with new expansions for. This is the old school frickin' hard on tabletop version. There is something like 1,200 frickin' mechs. There are hundreds of vehicles. There's even those bastards in power armor that everyone loves to hate as they crawl over your mech and start tearing stuff off. Every single type of weapon from the tabletop. I mentioned the LBX autocannons in there. But they've also got the Artemis targeting systems. The Long Tom is now available again. And just to make it even more fun, you can get cheaper, higher damage pirate stuff that, it might kill the opponent or it might blow up and kill you because, well, that's just the way pirates roll. It's a lot of fun. It is stupidly hard. It's no longer just a matter of taking out a center torso because that center torso has a really tough engine in it. If you're really lucky, it's an IC engine, but chances are it's probably not. I haven't seen one, but apparently there's the nuclear urban mech kicking around somewhere. So don't shoot that one from close distance. It's utterly insane. You jump into it in career mode as opposed to story mode, and the person behind this, who I should probably mention, Lady something. I want to say Arcady, but that's absolutely wrong. But there's now like a persistent online world that you can join in. It's not that you're doing multiplayer, it's just that as you're doing missions, planets change hands between the factions, and all of a sudden, Lady Aleko is the person behind this, and it's just stupidly good. There's a full installation set. You've got to jump back to BattleTech 1.4 as opposed to 1.5, but it's free, and it's just, if you geeked out on the BattleTech game, this is almost the whole expanded version where, you had to roll dice just to figure out if your pilot could find the joystick, let alone shoot something. It's a lot of fun. Give it a shot if you like BattleTech. And yeah, there are cattle masters. So, if you watched, what was it, Love, Death, and Robots that came out recently on Netflix, and you really liked that episode where the mechs were fighting back the alien invasions to save their cows, well, yeah, you can drive that mech. I wouldn't. It's crap, but you can.
All right, good pick. And Josh, you're up next.
Me? You want a fast game drive that's not spinning Rust? The Intel 660p has gone down significantly in price. Now this is the Amazon cost. It's $225.53, but for a 2 terabyte drive that does 1,800 megabytes per second writes and reads, that's pretty good. And Newegg, they had the special on today if you were their eBlast member for $199. So 10 cents a gigabyte.
Finally.
If you want a relatively fast, non-spinning Rust gaming drive, this is an excellent idea. Sure, just use a regular SSD for your OS drive, but if you want a good, fast gaming drive that's large, that can host all of your Steam games, because, a 500 to 512 gig drive, you've got now maybe 6 or 7 games on there that you may actually play. That would be like, Far Cry 5 is 70 gigs in size.
Yeah.
In fact, a little bit more. And then you start thinking like Destiny 2 and Anthem, Battlefield 5 for those people who play it. And all these, it fills it up fast. 2 terabytes will give you a lot of games you can bounce around with without mixing and matching. So it's fast. It's nice. That's hard to pass up at that price at this time.
Yeah, and I just had to buy a bunch of M.2s because I'm about to review a QNAP NAS that uses exclusively M.2 storage, and I was buying SATA. It's SATA M.2. SATA M.2 drives are more expensive than this.
Oof.
It's nuts. That's a good.
I'm just trying to picture the NAS that's just using M.2s. That
it's
how small is
must
that
look
NAS?
a bit like an old freaking portable hard drive.
It's in a box, so it's not easily accessible right now, but you'll see it soon. It's a tiny little box that uses 4 of them, but it's got built-in 10 gigabit Ethernet and HDMI. It uses a Celeron processor with hardware transcoding. It's a nice little box, so we'll be talking about that more. But I overpaid for storage. No, damn. Well.
We'll hear more about.
Well, on the plus side, Alan's
box next week.
jealous.
What was that, Jeremy?
He's not going to repeat it.
Oh,
We're going to hear more about your tight little box next week. That Alan's jealous about. Alan probably wants to get into it.
Yeah, he's more of a roll your own kind of guy. So his basement is just like a table with a bunch of just bare drives sitting on it with the cables running to them.
Does he spin them on poles?
Not as far as he showed me. Yeah. But he keeps talking about putting them all in this big array he was going to build, except it never, at least as of the last time I saw, it had not come to pass. But
I've never seen an array hit critical mass before.
But Sebastian, you've got the last pick here. It's something that's meaningful to your life, I guess.
Very much. Anybody who tests games, OCAT is basically the open alternative to FCAT. And it's using PresentMon. It captures game information. It's an alternative to Fraps, basically a modern alternative to Fraps. But Fraps obviously does a lot of different things. This doesn't record gameplay or anything. This simply presents an overlay and captures game data. It presents it in very, very easy to parse, very easy to analyze files that you can access afterwards and make your graphs and get information about the gameplay. But they've added some things with version 1.4, which just came out, which include a tone that lets you know that the capture's actually started. There are certain games that don't allow their overlay, so you cannot tell if it started capturing anything or not. You're just guessing, hoping that when you press your hotkey that it's actually doing something. And then the many times where it didn't actually work, having to go back and try to figure out why there's no data output. And so that's eliminated. If you don't hear a tone, it didn't work. And then they're adding 95th percentile performance data in the summaries that get dumped. So that's nice because it had previously been average frame time, 99th percentile frame time. And then if you wanted to get any additional frame time data, you had to create your own formulas and access that data from the file. And now it's going to present that as well. So it's going to be even better than it already was. Most games work with OCAT. I've had a lot of trouble with Ubisoft games, but hopefully I can get that working with this new version. And just check it out. It's free. I mean, OCAT is the open source capture and analytics tool for games.
You're going to have to wait for UCAT to come out for the Ubisoft games.
Well,
one other thing, actually, I saw Scott Wasson had posted. I saw on Twitter earlier because I've not downloaded and installed this at all. I saw this earlier today, but Scott said that it's also doing the frame color bars the same way as FCAT.
Yes.
So this is basically your
not only that, but when it's not even
FCAT.
being presented, it will have audio cues that it's recording.
Yes, I'm a big fan.
And Ubisoft games you don't have to worry about because those will soon be exclusively served up via Stadia. And
oh, brother,
it just whatever you don't have a choice. It runs how it runs, and that's all there is to it.
Do you think Google's infrastructure is robust enough? If there's a server in Michigan close enough to me that there's low enough latency, but did they have enough infrastructure out there for Google Plus? That's what I want to know. Is this just like, hey, we already had a little server farm, let's just upgrade these blades to this new Vega 56 Intel custom SoC thing with its 16
you're in luck,
gigabytes
Sebastian.
of shared memory? Yeah.
There was one of those shipping containers going through what is that, Lake Superior up by you? And it sank, so it's now fully water cooled and ready for you to use.
Oh, perfect. I wonder, Lake Michigan presents a lot of attractive options for completely submerged server farm. They could probably use some like retired submarines. Although, how are you going to get a submarine to Lake Michigan? I haven't really thought this through.
We're out through the St. Larry. It'll fit.
Okay.
Or build it on site. It's the best option.
Just put it on a barge. Just a barge of servers floating around.
Yeah. Although, I mean, and I know you were joking, but I do worry about Google server capacity with some of this stuff, because if this does move to if this takes off and this becomes the primary gaming platform for most companies, I mean, people today complain just about having online connected games on like launch weekend, the server you can't connect or it keeps crashing. With this, it's going to be like, hey, sorry, there's no server space. You're 25th, you're number 2,536 in line. Stand by. Average wait time is 3 hours. And they're certainly going to be able to spin up instances as necessary, but they don't have infinite computing power. And if these are really high-end 8K games, there will be limits. So.
Oh, well, now 8K? Jim, come on. Streaming 8K games.
They said they're building it for the future. They can go 1080p.
Radeon Vega 56 is very good. It's a very, very solid 1440p option. It is not an 8K option.
They, as of today, they claim that each instance will have the compute capability of, 10.7 teraflops?
Yeah, I saw that. So this is going to be optimized in the way that like a PlayStation 4 is optimized. So it's going to punch above its weight when you actually look at the architecture and the fact that all of the system memory is that HBM2.
Yep.
So.
And it runs on Linux
for the 3 to 5 years that it lasts.
Yeah.
Well, Google doesn't have a history of pulling the plug on products, so
not at all. No.
I say invest all your money in Stadia.
Mm-hmm.
However they let you.
Also, what's with the name? Come on, Stadia.
Well, it's like there were several images in the presentation of like the gladiatorial combat in a stadium, and
why not call it Stadium? Google Stadium.
Because they wanted
because there's more than one
trademark thing, or I don't know.
Facebook has Stadium as a sporting event channel.
Oh, do they?
Yeah,
I didn't know.
Facebook Stadium. Yeah.
Well, there you go. Oh, and I guess we didn't mention initially though. Was the big surprise to me at least was Jade Raymond showed up because she had left a while ago, maybe 6 to 8 months ago, and she said she was working on a secret project, going to some big secret thing, and so this was it. Apparently, she's taking over the their studio, their publishing studio, or as I don't know, I can't remember what her title is, but she's part of basically Google now becoming a publishing player as well. So
she's director of community engagement.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm just that's what Kyle's title is.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So
Wasn't that
Interesting
Ryan's
there.
title?
that's
no,
it.
he's
That's it.
chief performance
That's it.
analyst
Strategist.
or strategist.
He was an analyst. Now he's a strategist. Come on,
Go,
Jim.
all right, go ahead, Josh. Go ahead.
We're done, right?
We are done. Take off.
This is it. This is the. Oh, thank the Lord. These
Yep.
things have been getting long. I mean, not
They
that
have been.
I don't approve.
Oh,
of,
we're back to the
long,
2
but,
hour ones.
Yeah, and it's killing me in my bladder.
All right. Well, we'll get you a bucket for the future shows. And
Get a little,
thanks everyone for
catheter.
Yeah, there you go.
Make
That's
sure
a
to
good
let the
option.
dog out.
But thanks everyone for watching. This has been episode 357 of the podcast, the PC Perspective podcast. We're glad you could join us. I hope everyone has a great week. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.